The tantrum started before the plane even left the gate. I had settled into my seat 12A. Window me favorite spot because I liked watching the clouds peel away from the wings. My boarding pass clearly said it, and I checked it 3 times like always. The flight was nearly full. Passengers shuffling bags overhead. Attendants moving briskly with polite but tight smiles. Then she appeared. Karen. Her frame filled the aisle. Arms clutching a giant tote bag like a weapon. Lips pursed so tightly they looked carved from stone. She stopped at my row, glared at me like I had trespassed on her front lawn, and barked. That's my seat. Window. Move. I blinked, holding up my boarding pass with forced calm. Ma'am, this is 12A. My ticket. She snatched at the paper, eyes flicking only for a second before she snapped. Doesn't matter. I booked the window. I always book the window. Middle seat is unacceptable. Her voice rose high enough for the entire section to hear. The man in 12C shrank back, pretending to scroll his phone, unwilling to get involved. But I could feel the heat crawling up my neck. I'm sorry, but this is my assigned seat. You'll need to sit where your ticket places you. That was when she really lost it. She stomped her foot, actually stomped, sending ripples through the aisle carpet, and bellowed, I'm not sitting in the middle like some animal. You will move, or I will have the attendants throw you out. Do you know who I am? A murmur spread through the rows. People pulling out their phones to record. A flight attendant hustled over, trying to soothe her, but Karen flailed her arms, shrieking, He's stealing my seat. This is theft. Her face was beet red, sweat beading on her brow, her massive tote bag knocking against knees as she gestured wildly. The attendant checked our boarding passes with professional patience. Ma'am, your ticket says 12B. This gentleman is correctly seated in 12A. Karen snapped her fingers at her like she was a servant. Then fix it. Switch us. He's younger. He doesn't need the window. I need the view. I need the air. I get motion sick without it. Her excuses poured like spoiled milk, sour and reeking of entitlement. I could have caved, could have given her what she demanded just to keep the peace. But something inside me hardened. I thought of all the times people like her had bulldozed through rules, taking what wasn't theirs because no one dared say no. I leaned back in my seat, folded my arms, and said clearly, No, I'm not moving. A hush fell, punctuated by the whir of the overhead fans. Karen froze, then erupted like a volcano. This is harassment. I'll have you kicked off this plane. Security. Her voice cracked, and the phones recording her caught every second of it. The attendant's patience was visibly thinning. Ma'am, you must take your assigned seat or we cannot depart. But Karen only grew louder, demanding supervisors, demanding justice, demanding the entire flight bend to her will. Just then, a deep voice cut through the chaos from 3 rows back. Is there a problem up there? Heads turned as a tall man rose, steady and commanding. He wore a navy blazer, salt and pepper hair, and the calm eyes of someone who had weathered storms bigger than this. He stepped forward, showing his boarding pass and ID to the attendant before turning toward Karen. His voice was even, but carried an unmistakable authority. I couldn't help overhearing. This gentleman is in his rightful seat. You are disturbing the flight. Please sit down before you delay everyone. Karen rounded on him, hands on her hips, nostrils flaring. And who are you to tell me what to do? She spat. He gave a small smile and said, Senator Douglas Grant, Chair of the Transportation Committee. The cabin gasped, whispers flaring instantly. Karen's mouth fell open, her arms slackening at her sides. The very man responsible for Federal Airline Consumer Protections was standing right here, watching her tantrum unravel. For a moment, she stammered, trying to recover. "Senator, that doesn't matter. I paid for comfort. This isn't fair." But her voice faltered under the weight of the stairs, the cameras, and the iron gaze of the senator. He leaned closer, speaking just loud enough for half the cabin to hear. "What isn't fair is endangering a plane full of passengers with your behavior. Sit down, ma'am. Now." The twist landed like thunder. Karen's power drained away in an instant, her face a mask of disbelief. She clutched her tote like a lifeline, muttering something about discrimination, but finally squeezed herself into the middle seat. Defeated. The phones kept recording, capturing her sulking silence as the attendants thanked everyone for their patience. The engines roared to life, and the plane finally taxied toward the runway. But I knew this wasn't over. At 30,000 feet, something else would happen, something that would turn her sulk into the bitter shock of her life. As the wheels left the ground and the cabin tilted into the sky, the chaos of the boarding faded into a heavy, tense silence. Karen wedged in her middle seat, arms folded tightly across her chest, huffing like a child punished at the dinner table. Her tote bag bulged against her knees, and every so often she muttered under her breath loud enough for others to hear. "Unbelievable. Treated like trash. I should sue this airline." The man in the aisle seat beside her looked as if he would rather jump out midair than endure her constant grumbling. I kept my gaze on the clouds, refusing to give her the attention she craved. But my ears caught every word. About 30 minutes into the flight, the senator unbuckled and strolled down the aisle. He stopped right beside our row and bent toward me. "Mind if I sit here a while?" he asked politely, nodding toward the empty jump seat across the aisle reserved for crew when not in use. The attendant, recognizing him, allowed it. Karen stiffened, her eyes darting, realizing he was deliberately staying within earshot. Passengers perked up like an audience sensing an encore. Then the twist came. The senator reached into his blazer pocket and produced a thick folder of papers, casually resting them on his lap. He spoke softly, but not so soft that Karen couldn't hear. "I wanted to thank you," he said to me, "for standing your ground back there. Too often, passengers are bullied into surrendering what is rightfully theirs. That's why I'm reviewing new legislation to protect travelers from harassment and false claims. Incidents like what just happened matter more than you realize." Karen's head snapped toward him, eyes wide. "Wait, Yuri, you're really working on laws about this?" She sputtered. Her voice carried a note of fear now, not anger. The senator turned his gaze to her, calm but sharp. "Yes. And I witnessed firsthand how dangerous entitlement can become when someone refuses to follow the rules. You filed a false complaint, delayed this flight, and threatened a passenger. Imagine if security had pulled him off the plane wrongly. Imagine if we'd lost precious time in an emergency because of your tantrum." His words cut clean. No need for shouting. Phones clicked back on, passengers recording again as Karen tried to defend herself. "Two didn't know. I get motion sick. I just needed the window. You don't understand." Her voice cracked, desperation bleeding through. The senator's reply was merciless in its calm. "What I understand is that selfishness endangers everyone. On this plane, your comfort never outweighs safety or truth." The rest of the flight was excruciating for her. Every time she muttered, passengers glared. Every time she shifted, someone aimed a phone. Her power evaporated at 30,000 feet. And by the time the seatbelt sign dinged for descent, she was a shell of the furious queen who had stormed aboard. But the reckoning was not finished. As we landed and taxied to the gate, two uniformed airline officials stood waiting in the jet bridge. Karen's face blanched. They asked her to step aside for questioning about her disruptive behavior. The gasp that rippled through the cabin was almost theatrical. Cameras caught it all, the stumble in her walk, the way she tried to hold her head high while her lips trembled. News of the incident spread within hours. The senator confirmed the story publicly, calling it a case study in why air passenger protections must be strengthened. Karen's tirade became viral fuel, memes, articles, late-night jokes. Her face, twisted mid-scream, was plastered everywhere with captions like, "Not your seat," "Karen," and 30,000 feet of entitlement. Neighbors back home recognized her immediately. They whispered about how she had always bullied people at HOA meetings, how she fined families for the smallest violations, how she acted like queen of the cul-de-sac. Now the world saw what they had endured in private. The humiliation was total. She lost her HOA presidency within weeks, the board voting her out after public pressure. She tried to rally sympathy, claiming she was a victim of fake news and online bullying. But no one bought it. The evidence was too clear, her arrogance too raw. Meanwhile, the senator kept his promise. He spearheaded hearings on passenger rights, using her tantrum as a cautionary tale. In testimony, he referenced a woman so entitled she demanded law enforcement remove a rightful passenger from his seat. Without naming her, everyone knew. Legislation passed months later, tightening penalties for disruptive passengers and reinforcing passengers' right to their assigned seat. I saw Karen one last time in the grocery store parking lot. She was quieter, smaller somehow, carrying bags without her usual booming orders or glares. Our eyes met briefly. She looked away first. No words were exchanged, none were needed. That flight taught me something unforgettable. Standing your ground against bullies isn't just about defending a seat, a space, or a right. Sometimes it ripples far beyond, changing rules, inspiring others, and pulling down the walls of arrogance that shield entitlement. So here's my question for you. Was I right to stand firm and let her tantrum play out in full view of the world? Or should I have given in for peace, even if it meant rewarding her bullying? What do you think?